It's time now for County-Wide, a presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. You'll hear about the interesting issues and happenings that affect all our lives. Here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day and welcome to the program. I'm Brad Miller. It's County-Wide. We're happy to welcome into studio today a guest that we've talked to any number of times in the past, but it has been a while. It's been too long since we chatted with someone from the National Weather Service office. And today, Megan Taylor is here, and Megan is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the National Weather Service office in Flagstaff. You're out in Belmont, right, the office?
Yes, that's right. We're in Belmont.
Just not too far from Flagstaff.
A little bit west,
So we always shorthand you to we relocate you, shorthand you to Flagstaff. Well, thanks for coming in. It's been some time since we've had you down here, and we apologize for that. But it's always interesting to chat, and there's certainly any time of year there's a good thing to talk about with the weather and what is happening. And so many of us are attracted to Arizona because of the weather that we get and don't get. Midwest, talking to you, and those kinds of things. So we appreciate you coming down. When I say it, we'll loop back to this later. We're going to do a couple segments with Megan. Warning coordination, that sounds like a very specific thing. When we get the alerts and that important breaking information about flooding or monsoon, that's you?
That is me, yeah.
Okay.
My primary position is to basically be the liaison between the National Weather Service and any of the partners that use our information.
Okay.
So that's anyone from ADOT to county partners, city partners, media, anyone we're working close with to convey and communicate weather information and assist them in making their weather-related decisions.
Right. Because that's what you're there for.
Exactly.
If you sat on all that data, it wouldn't do anybody any good.
Exactly.
So getting it out is the whole point.
Right. Perfect forecast doesn't mean anything if people don't get the information.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to get into that. I want to ask some things just kind of generically and just kind of chat and try to paint a picture of what the National Weather Service at large does, and then maybe a bit more specifically about what your division does. Can I just ask ballpark figure, how many people work at your office or your center? What do you call it?
Sure. Yeah. Office.
Office. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, we have about 23 folks when we're fully staffed.
Okay.
We're short a few right now.
Okay.
And we have about 13 meteorologists that work rotating shifts, so 24/7, 365.
You bet.
Round the clock. Weather doesn't stop. So we've got someone there at all times that's capable of issuing weather warnings.
Okay.
And then we have IT folks to help us out. We've got a staff of 3 management positions. One of those, which is mine, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. We have a Science and Operations Officer, and then our meteorologist in charge.
Okay.
And then we've got a staff of electronics technicians.
Sure.
So they help maintain all of our weather radios, our radar.
You bet.
All of the equipment.
Well, that's never ending, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. How many offices of similar size, then, would be in Arizona?
Good question. We have 3 offices, Flagstaff, Phoenix, Tucson.
Makes sense.
But the Las Vegas office actually covers Mojave County.
Okay.
So we're covered by 4 different offices.
Gotcha.
And then nationally, about 122 offices total.
Okay.
All across the country.
And probably we could kind of sort of believe major metro adjacent for the most part.
Well, every piece of the country is covered by an office.
Gotcha.
So even some of the more rural areas have offices as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But a lot of them are coincide with the...
As needed based on coverage and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it makes perfect sense. All right. I want to talk to you about something that I couldn't help. Many of us, I think, were impacted by the January terrible fires in the Los Angeles area. And I'm a grandpa now, and I didn't know wind could do what it was doing over there. Just watching the way it drove those flames. There's not any amount of water or any number of firefighters that can get in front of something like that. It's Mother Nature at her worst.
Yeah.
I'd never seen winds like that. I didn't know the Santa Ana winds in L.A. Blew out to the sea, not in. I assume they came from the ocean. Mm-hmm. They come down out of the mountains. I know you can't kind of get into all of that. There's a lot of different kinds of things that have come into effect because the blame games have all started and probably should in Los Angeles. What I wanted to do, though, is ask wind. Mm-hmm. When we talk about wildfire, especially, and it's always a concern in our area, We can talk about fuel mitigation. We can talk about prescribed burning. We can talk about educating the public. We can't do anything about the wind. How does that work, and why does wind is always going to be a factor when we talk about wildfire anywhere, but obviously here in northern Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a factor here. Weather's always a factor.
Of course.
And it tends to be an exacerbator of wildfires. And so in the case of the Santa Ana winds, like you said, the winds are blowing basically from the higher terrain out to the sea.
Incredible.
So it's a bit opposite of what, we typically see in onshore flow.
Right.
It's kind of the reversal.
Yeah.
And these winds, what's kind of unique about the Santa Ana winds is that they're flowing from, or air is being forced up and over a mountain range and then down the other side. And when that happens, the air is being forced down, it accelerates, it warms, and it has a drying effect. So that's what can be incredibly dangerous with the Santa Anas, is they're warming and drying. The winds are actually doing that as they proceed down the mountainside. And so you can imagine with 70, 80 plus mile per hour winds, that effect is just exacerbated.
Yeah. And this, how it was sustained. You can get some strong winds, but usually that passes after hours, if even that long. That's what I'd never seen anything like it. But see, similarly here again, I'm trying to apply this to us. We're going to have some similar things. We've got some bumpy topography, even in our part of the country, the state, but all over Arizona. So that kind of similar situations going to apply, where you're going to have wind first dry out those fuels, and then once they get ignite, drive those flames and fuels.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, this season, we're lacking a lot of moisture.
Yeah.
It's no secret that we've been very dry, historically dry this winter. And so we are concerned for fire season. And, there's a few pieces to the wildfire risk. Of course, fuels, kind of the first part. Snowpack, what's the moisture been like? Weather, and that's where the wind piece comes in. So what's weather and wind doing?
Right.
And so, like you said, once we get to springtime, the wind really acts as that drying mechanism. So it can affect fuels in a matter of a few days. We can be looking at, even if we have a little moisture, within a week, some of those fine fuels can be dried out. So that's kind of one of the things that the wind does, especially here in Arizona, is just the drying.
Yeah. As we chat with Megan this morning, we're here just in late January, and I know that this show will repeat a time or two. But I had a fire chief tell me a few years ago, it's always wildfire season in Arizona. The wettest winter might delay it or put it off a tiny bit, but we're already kind of starting to head towards spring, even as you and I chat here today. Are we going to see anything? Just look into that crystal ball, which I know people think that you guys do, but you really don't. How are we feeling about, say, through the end of the quarter, into March?
Sure. I wish I had better news.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're already way behind on our snowpack and moisture, for the cool season. And a lot of that is due to the La Nina pattern we've had in place, which has just resulted in a blocking pattern. So we're just not getting the storms coming through. Yeah. Unfortunately, that looks to continue through the spring. So it's not looking good. The outlooks through the early part of the spring are certainly for warmer and drier than average conditions to continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on that downer, we'll take a short break. I don't think you're telling us, most of us who've been here a little while anyway, kind of haven't observed already. When we come back, I want to meet La Nina. I've got questions about she and her little brother and what exactly that is, since you brought it up. So I've got some questions yet for Megan Taylor. Megan is the warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service office in the Flagstaff area. Plenty more to come. It's countywide. We'll be back after this.
Life changes, then it changes again. Predicting the unexpected in life is impossible. That's why it's called unexpected. So when it comes to financial goals, our philosophy is don't predict, prepare. Hi, I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Matthias Sandoval. A job loss, change in health, or a loss of a loved one can have a big impact on your family's financial security. Let's work together to help make sure you're equipped for life's unexpected events. Call our office to schedule a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Verde Solaire, your hometown heating, air conditioning, and plumbing company in the Verde Valley. And your trusted North Central Arizona Goodman dealer. Goodman is a name you can trust with the revolutionary Comfort Bridge technology factory installed into select Goodman gas furnaces and air handlers to ensure the entire system operates at peak energy efficient performance. Verde Solar offers free in-home estimates, locally owned and operated since 1983. Visit them at verdesolar.com. Better, cleaner, faster.
Thank you so very much for your generosity and kindness in helping others. I hope that you take advantage of the many Arizona state tax credits available when giving to qualified charities and schools. If you haven't taken advantage, I hope you'll ask your favorite charity if they qualify. You can go to Arizona Department of Revenue website, search for tax credits, and look at the list of qualifying charities. Then look at your latest Arizona income tax return and see how an Arizona tax credit can benefit many. This is Lewis saying thanks again.
Let's talk. That's the message from Jonna Randall Murdoch, your local Farm Bureau agent, providing a personal touch when making insurance and financial decisions. Jonna will simplify your insurance needs while offering competitive pricing. Let's talk auto, home, life, and farm. Call Jonna at Farm Bureau today at 928-649-8686. Your Cottonwood Farm Bureau property and casualty insurance company. At Farm Bureau, they insure more than just farms.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Brad Miller. Megan Taylor is our guest. Megan is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service office based in Belmont near Flagstaff. And Megan's the one, if it's run for the hills, the water's coming up, Megan's going to help us prepare for that and know when it's coming. And the warning coordination kind of speaks for itself, that title.
Exactly.
We're going to talk more about that probably in our second segment. You mentioned La Nina. El Nino. I've been here since 1987. I got to tell you, this is my fault, not yours. I've never really quite understood what those weather patterns are, what time of year each is applied, the difference between the two, and how it can be such a big impact on us in northern Arizona.
Yes, it is, and a very interesting phenomena. So El Nino and La Nina are part of a global climate cycle. Believe it or not, they actually are describing the temperature of the ocean waters in the Pacific Ocean near the equator. And I know you're probably thinking, how in the world does that impact us? Yeah. Believe it or not, it does. It can change the jet stream and the storm track. And so during an El Nino, we typically see warmer ocean waters. And what that does is brings the storm track further south into the Southwest and Arizona and the southern United States. So we tend to see wetter conditions, especially during a moderate or strong El Nino. Those are the years when we tend to see a wetter pattern. Now, it's not 100% correlation, but most of those years we see a wetter pattern. Okay. Conversely, La Nina is associated with cooler ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. And we're talking down by the equator, but that has an effect of pushing the jet stream further north. And that means our storm track is more across the northern United States. So much like we've seen this year, we end up with this big ridge of high pressure just sitting over the west, and the storms go up and over the high pressure and basically into the central and eastern part of the country. And we miss out. We get a little bit of cold and some wind, and we just stay mostly dry.
God, that's just so freaky. I'm kind of imagining in my head a globe as you describe this. So I'm just kind of trying to kind of visualize. Ain't it wild what a small world it can be sometimes?
Absolutely.
When you're talking about these things, something that's thousands of miles away from us, the equatorial systems, the temperature of the ocean, and bang, there we go. So kind of sort of saying, if I can get this right, I'm thinking of my own grandchildren as I say this, that little boy we kind of tend to like a little bit more than the little girl.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but we want that moisture, yes.
Okay. Well, let's not divide it that way. But yeah, in Arizona, we never complain when it's raining, or we certainly shouldn't. Exactly. So we want that weather pattern. Okay. So when one of these kicks in right now, La Nina is kind of calling the shots. That's going to linger how long? Is this a winter phenomenon? Okay.
It is, and I'm glad you asked that because El Nino and La Nina mostly come into play only during the cold months, the wintertime. So anytime from like October through maybe March or April. And this year, La Nina is expected to continue through about April. So it's likely we're going to continue to see this drier than normal pattern through the spring.
Okay. How far out do you know which or when one of those will take hold?
That's a great question. I would say maybe on a 6-month time frame. You know, there's already climate projections that go through the summer and maybe into next fall. But of course, the farther we go out, the more uncertain we become. But yeah, there are some, I would say, about 6 months in advance, we kind of know when one is coming.
Okay.
And they tend to go on a 3 to 5 year cycle.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are we in such a cycle with the La Nina pattern right now then?
Yeah. This was the first year of La Nina. Sometimes we can see them back to back, but a lot of times we'll go from La Nina into neutral and sometimes flip back into El Nino even the next year. So it varies quite a bit.
Okay.
And the way it's looking right now is that we're going to kind of phase out of La Nina and then back to neutral.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you broke it, you bought it. Once La Nina kind of settles in for one season anyway, she's not likely to become an El Nino, and we're going to get good news at the end. We're going to kind of have to, okay, this is established, say in January when we're recording this, and that's kind of how it's going to be in the spring.
I would say the jury's still out in terms of next winter. It's possible things could flip around.
Okay.
It can from a year to the next go from La Nina to El Nino.
Okay.
But sometimes we'll see a couple neutral years in there. And there's a lot of different things that impact the climate. So it's not just El Nino and La Nina. There's other types of these patterns that we study as well that can play a role. But those are the two majors.
What would some of that be then?
There's other ones called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation.
Don't you cuss
all
at me.
Kinds of
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All kinds of different correlations that are studied to try to determine how they impact precipitation.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It's just
its own field.
Yeah. Well, it just kind of blows my mind that we're talking about things again that are happening. Who would think? It's almost like butterfly effect type stuff.
Absolutely.
If Dolly the dolphin is swimming in cold water right now, we're going to have a crappy winter.
Absolutely.
In terms of precipitation and snow and all the things that we really kind of need.
Yes.
For desert living. Okay, fascinating. It's so funny how these things, we know they're established, but still it's an imprecise science like so many things are.
Yes.
And so many factors can come and manipulate what we think we know. You never stop learning, do you? I want to talk about technology in our second segment, but with everything we've got, radar, all of the things you kind of mentioned at the top of the show, there's still some, I don't know if you'd call it guesswork, educated guesswork, I guess is the best what we would say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and our forecast models have come a long way in the past even 5 and 10 years, but we still have a long way to go. We have a lot more information in the short term, so say on like the 1 to 2 day time frame, where we have a lot more information coming at us to make decisions. But beyond, 3 days, it's still kind of that territory where we don't have a lot of new information there. So, and the models aren't perfect. And that's part of our job is trying to determine what we think is going to happen based on our experience and the models, put all that information together.
Constantly shaping what we think is going to come, give out. You do the best you can. You get the best information at any one moment. Then you call the play. And you can't always get the play exactly correct. It seems to me that a lot of times, especially when we're talking about wintry weather, which is probably the easiest to observe. What we see on the West Coast happens. If I hear it's raining in Los Angeles on Wednesday, I know probably it's going to rain here on Friday. Am I oversimplifying that, or is there something to that?
No, I would say you're mostly correct. A lot of our weather systems move from west to east. So it is that way most of the time. When it's raining in Southern California, we can be sure we're going to get some snow in Flagstaff.
Okay.
But the exception to that is kind of the pattern we've seen this year. And we've talked about the Santa Ana winds. That's a bit of the exception to that pattern. So the Santa Ana winds, we had storm systems going way north, almost into Canada, and then dropping down into the Rocky Mountains. And so that brings us kind of a northeasterly flow. That's the Santa Ana winds. And so we're actually seeing systems coming from the north or maybe even the east at times. So that one's a little bit different. There are different patterns, but I would say on the whole, yes. We're typically looking to the west to see what's coming.
Sounds like when we bounce back to the El Nino, La Nina effect, it sounds like those greenhorns in Denver are going to get the best of both worlds. just the way they're situated geographically.
You know, I actually used to work in Western Colorado, and it is interesting. The La Nina years favor those northern mountains, and the El Nino years favor the southern mountains. Again, it's not a one-to-one correlation, but most of the time that's what you see.
See, that's so funny. You think, Colorado's a big state, but even there, you kind of parse it out in a relatively, globally speaking, small area, and that's the kind of impact these things can have.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. All right. What a science. It's an art, really. And we're talking with Megan Taylor, the warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service. This is the first of two segments we're recording with Megan here in late January. When we come back, we'll pass on some information about maybe some websites or other information about how you can get in touch with Megan. And then we're going to talk about technology in our second segment. Is there a better or worse phone app for predicting the weather? What happens with some of those red flag warnings, and what should you pay attention to as we get ourselves closer and closer to summertime and monsoon season? We'll be back with Megan Taylor on Countywide right after this.
Life changes, then it changes again. Predicting the unexpected in life is impossible. That's why it's called unexpected. So when it comes to financial goals, our philosophy is don't predict, prepare. Hi, I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Matthias Sandoval. A job loss, change in health, or a loss of a loved one can have a big impact on your family's financial security. Let's work together to help make sure you're equipped for life's unexpected events. Call our office to schedule a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Verde Solaire, your hometown heating, air conditioning, and plumbing company in the Verde Valley, and your trusted North Central Arizona Goodman dealer. Goodman is a name you can trust with the revolutionary Comfort Bridge technology, factory installed into select Goodman gas furnaces and air handlers to ensure the entire system operates at peak energy efficient performance. Verde Solaire offers free in-home estimates, locally owned and operated since 1983. Visit them at verdesolaire.com. Better, cleaner, faster.
Thank you so very much for your generosity and kindness in helping others. I hope that you take advantage of the many Arizona state tax credits available when giving to qualified charities and schools. If you haven't taken advantage, I hope you'll ask your favorite charity if they qualify. You can go to Arizona Department of Revenue website, search for tax credits, and look at the list of qualifying charities. Then look at your latest Arizona income tax return and see how an Arizona tax credit can benefit many. This is Lewis saying thanks again.
Let's talk. That's the message from Jonna Randall Murdoch, your local Farm Bureau agent, providing a personal touch when making insurance and financial decisions. Jonna will simplify your insurance needs while offering competitive pricing. Let's talk auto, home, life, and farm. Call Jonna at Farm Bureau today at 928-649-8686. Your Cottonwood Farm Bureau property and casualty insurance company. At Farm Bureau, they insure more than just farms.
And again, we welcome you back to the program. Just a final quick segment with Megan Taylor, warning coordination meteorologist. We're going to get more into the warning piece in the next segment that we do with Megan. But as we wrap up segment one, just that, if folks are hearing some things, if they have questions or want more information, there's probably, some online resources for me. Where should I go?
Yeah, I would suggest first going to our webpage, weather.gov/Flagstaff will bring you right to our homepage. You can always find the latest forecast information there. You use the little map, you click on your location. You can actually, there's a map interface. You can kind of move it around and click right to your block.
Excellent.
And you can bookmark that to get your forecast.
Okay. Terrific.
And then also the homepage has a lot of good resources. We have like a winter weather page, a monsoon weather page. So a lot of different informational stuff on the website too.
All right. Take a look, maybe especially as we head toward springtime, we start to get to those high winds. We get the big fire season threats. We start to get monsoon in the summer. And a great resource, obviously, the weather affects you every single day. Megan Taylor, warning coordination meteorologist, National Weather Service. I'm Brad Miller. It's Countywide, and we'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday at this time. If you have a topic or guest idea that you'd like to suggest, email us, news@myradioplace.com.